Salamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum, Muslim friends of the world. The sky above London glowed in soft gold as the sun slowly disappeared behind the skyline. But this was not an ordinary evening. There was something in the air, a quiet anticipation, a feeling that history was about to unfold. From every corner of the city, people began to move. Families, students, business professionals still in their work suits, mothers holding their children's hands, young Muslims wrapped in scarves, smiling with excitement. They were all heading toward one place, toward a moment many once thought was impossible. For generations, Windsor Castle has stood as a powerful symbol of British history and monarchy. Its ancient stone walls have witnessed wars, coronations, and royal ceremonies. But tonight, something different was about to happen inside those historic walls. For the first time on this scale, thousands of Muslims had been invited to break their Ramadan fast within the royal grounds under the patronage of Charles III. As trains rolled in and cars lined the roads, social media buzzed with disbelief. Is this real? Subhanallah. Inside the castle, this is history. The golden sunset reflected on the river Tempames. As the call to prayer time approached, the crowd outside the gates grew larger by the minute. Faces from every background. British-born Muslims, immigrants, converts, visitors, different languages. One faith, one shared moment. Some people stood quietly, overwhelmed. Others recorded videos, knowing this night would be remembered for years to come. No one knew exactly what the future would bring, but everyone could feel it. London was changing, and this was only the beginning. The news spread faster than anyone expected. It started as a quiet announcement. Then it became headlines. Then it became a national conversation. An official invitation had been extended under the patronage of Charles III. A large Ramadan iftar gathering to be held within the grounds of Windsor Castle. For many Muslims across London and beyond, it felt surreal. Windsor Castle is not just a building. It is one of the oldest and most iconic royal residences in the world. For centuries, it has symbolized tradition, power, and continuity of the British monarchy. And now, during the holy month of Ramadan, its historic halls would welcome the sound of prayer and the breaking of the fast. Phones buzzed non-stop. Community leaders received confirmation emails. Mosques shared the news after evening prayers. Families discussed it around dinner tables inside the castle. Thousands of Muslims. Is this really happening? For older generations who had witnessed years of misunderstanding and tension, the invitation carried deep emotion. Some remembered times when being visibly Muslim in Britain felt difficult. Now the king himself was opening royal grounds for a shared meal at sunset. The reactions were mixed across the country. Some praised it as a powerful symbol of unity and inclusion. Others debated what it meant for modern Britain. But within the Muslim community, one feeling was undeniable: recognition, not as outsiders, not as guests in the background, but as part of the British story. As the date approached, anticipation grew stronger. This was no longer just an event. It was becoming a moment that could redefine how a nation sees itself, and the world was beginning to pay attention. The afternoon sun slowly faded over London, but the energy in the city was rising. Trains heading toward Windsor were unusually full. Platforms buzzed with quiet excitement. Strangers exchanged smiles, recognizing one another with a simple greeting, Ramadan Mubarak. Families traveled together, dressed beautifully. Some men wore tailored suits. Others wore traditional this. Women arrived in elegant hijabs of every color imaginable. Children looked around with wide, curious eyes. They were not just attending an event. They were stepping into history. As the gates of Windsor Castle came into view, many slowed their steps. The ancient stone walls stood tall and majestic, just as they had for centuries. But tonight, something felt different. Security was calm but welcoming. Volunteers guided guests respectfully. The atmosphere carried dignity, not tension. An elderly man paused near the entrance, looking up at the castle towers. "I never thought I would see this in my lifetime," he whispered. Nearby, a young British-born Muslim recorded a video message. "This is our country too, and tonight proves it." As more people arrived, the courtyard began to fill. The diversity was striking. Different ethnic backgrounds, professions, accents, and life stories. Some were descendants of immigrants, some were converts, some were third-generation British Muslims, all united by faith. The golden light of sunset reflected off the castle windows. The sky turned shades of pink and deep orange. There was nervous excitement in the air. A sacred stillness slowly replaced the chatter. In just minutes, the sun would set, and inside one of the most historic royal residences in the world, thousands of Muslims would raise their hands in prayer together. London was watching, Britain was watching, and history was about to unfold. Silence slowly settled over the courtyard of Windsor Castle. The sky had turned deep orange, then purple. The final light of the sun rested gently on the ancient stone walls. Thousands of guests sat in neat rows, dates and water placed carefully in front of them. Conversations faded, phones were lowered. Hearts began to beat a little faster. For centuries, these walls had witnessed royal ceremonies, military honors, and state banquets. But tonight, something new was about to echo through the historic grounds. A single voice rose into the evening air. Allah Akbar, Allahu Akbar, the call to prayer. Clear, calm, powerful. The adhan moved through the open space, carrying a sound rarely heard in a place like this. It flowed across the courtyard, touching stone that had stood for nearly 1,000 years. Some closed their eyes, some trembled, some quietly wiped away tears. In that moment, differences disappeared, titles disappeared, backgrounds disappeared. There were no headlines, no debates, no politics, only faith. As the final words of the call to prayer faded, thousands of hands lifted in unison. A collective whisper of supplication filled the air. Then gently dates were lifted, water was sipped, the fast was broken. Inside the royal grounds of Windsor Castle, Muslims from across London and beyond shared a sacred moment together. It was simple. It was peaceful, but it felt monumental, because history is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence, carried on the voice of a prayer at sunset. The courtyard was calm after the fast was broken. Soft conversations filled the air, the clinking of glasses, the quiet laughter of children, the feeling of relief after a long day of fasting. Then attention slowly shifted toward the front. A small stage had been prepared, and soon, under the evening lights of Windsor Castle, a familiar figure stepped forward. Charles III. The crowd grew still. For many in attendance, this was more than a royal appearance. It was symbolic. Generations of Muslims in Britain had grown up balancing identity, faith, and belonging. Now the king stood before them during their holy month. He began to speak calmly with measured warmth. He spoke about the values of Ramadan, compassion, charity, patience, reflection. He acknowledged the contributions of Muslim communities across the United Kingdom in healthcare, education, business, and public service. He spoke about understanding, about unity, about how diversity strengthens a nation rather than weakens it. His words were not loud. They did not need to be, because the message was clear. You are part of this country's story. Some people nodded quietly. Others listened with folded hands. A few older guests wiped away tears from their eyes. For decades, many Muslims in Britain had hoped for moments like this. Not for applause, not for spectacle, but for recognition. As the king concluded his speech, respectful applause echoed through the castle grounds. It was not just applause for a monarch. It was applause for a shared future. And for a brief moment, under the historic towers of Windsor, the distance between tradition and change felt smaller than ever before. By the time dinner was fully underway, something deeper than celebration was taking shape. This was not just about one night at Windsor Castle, it was about a generation. Across London, Muslim communities had been quietly building for years. Young entrepreneurs launching startups, doctors leading hospital departments, students graduating from top universities, creators shaping culture online. But tonight felt different. It felt visible. At one table, a young woman studying law spoke about her dream of entering parliament. At another, a tech founder discussed building ethical finance platforms. Nearby, a group of teenagers took photos together, laughing, proud to be both fully British and fully Muslim. There was no hesitation in their identity, no apology in their faith. For older guests, this confidence was emotional to witness. Many remembered when being openly Muslim came with fear or misunderstanding, when headlines felt heavy, when belonging felt complicated. Now, inside one of Britain's most historic royal spaces, thousands were breaking bread together peacefully. It sent a quiet message. You do not have to choose between faith and nation. You can carry both. As conversations flowed under the castle lights, something powerful became clear. This was not just inclusion, it was evolution. A new chapter of British identity was unfolding, shaped not by division, but by participation, and the younger generation could feel it. They were not waiting to be accepted anymore. They were stepping forward, confident, capable, and ready to shape the future. Before the night had even ended, the images began to travel. Photos of thousands breaking their fast inside Windsor Castle flooded social media. Videos of the Adon echoing against ancient stone walls spread across platforms within minutes. By midnight, headlines were appearing far beyond London. International media outlets described it as a historic gesture. Commentators debated what it meant for modern Britain. Analysts called it a powerful symbol of interfaith recognition in a rapidly changing Europe. In cities across Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa, and North America, people shared clips with captions like, "Did you see this? This is historic. Britain is changing." Some praised it as a sign of hope in a divided world. Others questioned its political meaning, but no one ignored it. Inside the castle grounds, most guests were unaware of how quickly the moment was going global. They were simply present, sharing food, conversations, and quiet gratitude. Yet outside those walls, a larger narrative was forming. For years, discussions about Islam in Europe had often been framed around tension, migration, or controversy. Now, a different image was circulating: unity, dignity, recognition. Experts began discussing how demographic shifts, civic engagement, and generational change were reshaping British society. Community leaders emphasized that this night was not the result of one invitation alone. It was built on decades of contribution and dialogue. As dawn approached, one thing was undeniable. This was no longer just a local event. It had become a global conversation, and whether praised, debated, or analyzed, the message had traveled far beyond the castle walls. As the evening slowly came to a close, the lights around Windsor Castle glowed softly against the night sky. The courtyard that had been filled with thousands of voices was now calmer. Small groups lingered, exchanging final greetings. "See you next Ramadan. Inshallah, safe journey home." But no one was leaving the same way they had arrived. Something had shifted. Outside the castle gates, buses waited, trains prepared for late-night departures back towards London and other cities across the country. Families walked together quietly, reflecting on what they had just witnessed. For some, it was a powerful symbol of belonging. For others, it was a reminder of how far the community had come. For many young Muslims, it felt like proof that their identity was not a contradiction. It was a contribution. Inside the castle, history had been honored. Outside, the future was moving forward. The event would be analyzed, discussed, debated. Headlines would fade, social media trends would shift, but the memory would remain because moments like this do not change a nation overnight. They plant seeds, seeds of understanding, seeds of confidence, seeds of shared identity. And as the night sky stretched over Windsor, one quiet truth lingered in the air. This was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one written not just by kings or institutions, but by ordinary people who believe that faith and nation can stand side by side, and London would never feel quite the same again.